Landfall midnight. Category 4 winds slam the bay. Surge pushes through storm drains. The waterfront high-rise quivers. Generator coughs. Alarms strobe with a strange cadence. Rosalind arrives to assess. In a dim corridor, Finn kneels, tracing a pencil line across his battered notebook. A hand-drawn flood route, threading toward the infant floor. Water licks his boots. Mia squeezes his arm. Venus radios that stairwells are filling. Chief Wilkins orders a standby evacuation. Finn looks up, steady. This building's map is wrong. The water doesn't care about blueprints. It follows gravity. The hallway holds its breath as he points toward the locked pump room. Why would a janitor take command in a billionaire's tower? When Cadence reveals truth, who chooses people over optics, and how can one notebook reroute a storm? 6 hours earlier, the afternoon sun had thrown long shadows across the service entrance of the Archer Urban Waterfront Tower, where Finn Walker crouched beside Mrs. Chen's doorway on the second floor. His hands, scarred from years of work, guided a wrench with practiced precision as he tightened the final bolt on her sump pump housing. The metallic taste of approaching storm already hung in the air, mixing with the diesel fumes from evacuation buses idling 30 stories below. "Remember, Mia," he said to his 7-year-old daughter, who watched with intense concentration, her small fingers gripping a flashlight, torque in sequence, corner to corner, like making a bed tight. The water always finds the loose spot. Fix the flow. Save a life. Mia recited, the phrase as familiar to her as a bedtime prayer. It was what her father always said, what he'd learned in the Army Corps of Engineers before everything changed, before her mother's photo became the only presence on their kitchen table each morning. Mrs. Chen shuffled closer, her walker clicking against the terrazzo floor. "You don't have to do this, Finn. Building maintenance should handle it." "Building maintenance is overwhelmed," Finn replied, testing the pump's float switch. It clicked with satisfying authority. "Besides, this pump feeds into the main drainage manifold. If it fails, everyone below you gets the backup." Through the window, the bay churned gray-green, its surface textured like hammered metal. The radio on Finn's belt crackled with weather updates, sustained winds approaching 140 miles per hour, storm surge projections climbing. He'd seen floods before, mapped them for the Corps, watched water move through cities like blood through veins. But he'd also learned what happened to those who spoke uncomfortable truths about infrastructure. The photo in his wallet, behind Mia's school picture, showed him in uniform beside a levee system, back when his warnings about mislabeled backflow valves might have mattered. They'd blamed him for the minor flood that followed, made him the scapegoat when the real culprit was a contractor who'd cut corners. He'd left the field entirely, choosing night shifts and simple repairs over the politics of public safety. The elevator chimed, and Rosalind Archer stepped out, her presence immediately commanding the hallway's attention. Even in crisis preparation, she moved with calculated grace, her long blonde hair catching the emergency lighting, the red of her dress like a flag against the building's neutral palette. She was 34, self-made, and had built Archer Urban into a development empire by selling resilience buildings that could withstand anything nature threw at them. This tower was her flagship, her proof that luxury and safety weren't mutually exclusive. "Venus," she said into her phone, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from signing paychecks. "I need updated occupancy numbers for each floor. The lenders are breathing down my neck, and the insurance adjusters are already circling like vultures." She paused, noticing Finn. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in recognition, but in assessment. A janitor, kneeling on her expensive floors, teaching a child about pumps while her building prepared for catastrophe. "Ma'am," Finn said, not looking up from his work. "Might want to have someone check the auxiliary pumps in the lower mechanical room. The sensor cadence has been off all week." "The what?" Rosalind's heels clicked closer. The blink pattern on the water level sensors. They're supposed to synchronize with the staged drainage system, but 3 of them are drifting. Could mean nothing. Could mean the pumps aren't cycling properly. She studied him for a long moment, then continued walking. I'll have maintenance look into it. But Finn knew maintenance wouldn't look into it. They'd be overwhelmed with resident complaints, with moving furniture, with 100 visible tasks that disaster preparation required. The invisible ones, the ones that actually mattered, would wait until water was already finding its way through the building's veins. He finished tightening the last connection, tested the pump once more, and stood. His knees protested too many years on concrete floors, too many nights cleaning and fixing what others ignored. Mia handed him his notebook, its cover held together with duct tape. Pages swollen from years of sketches, measurements, and observations. Inside were hand-drawn maps of every drain, every pump, every potential flow path in the building. Not the official blueprints that hung in the management office, but real maps, drawn from crawling through utility tunnels at 3 in the morning, from listening to pipes sing their pressures, from understanding that water had its own logic. The wind was picking up now, rattling the windows in their frames. Somewhere above, a piece of loose flashing began its metallic percussion. The building's bones were starting to speak. By the time the sun set behind the wall of approaching storm clouds, the city had transformed. Streets emptied except for emergency vehicles, their lights painting wet asphalt in reds and blues. The bay's seawall cameras, streaming to every local news station, showed waves already cresting the lower barriers. Phone alerts buzzed in synchronized chaos evacuation zones. Shelter locations, the clinical language of disaster preparation. In the tower's mechanical room, 3 floors below ground level, Finn worked his regular shift but with heightened attention. The massive space hummed with the building's vital systems, pumps, generators, HVAC units, all the hidden machinery that kept 40 stories of luxury livable. He'd been down here during the last storm, had watched the systems handle the load with room to spare. But something was different now. The sensor lights blinked in their panels, but the rhythm was wrong. Where there should have been a steady pulse matching the staged drainage system, there was a hiccup. A drift that suggested the pumps weren't reading water levels correctly. Finn opened his notebook, sketching the pattern, noting the exact timing. In the core, he'd learned that small irregularities predicted large failures. Water didn't lie. It simply exposed every weakness, every shortcut, every compromise. The maintenance logs sat on a metal desk, their entries too perfect, too consistent. Every pump check marked complete at exactly 8-hour intervals. Every valve inspection signed off with identical handwriting. Finn had seen doctored logs before, had been blamed for flooding caused by someone else's falsified records. He photographed each page with his phone, then began his own inspection. The primary pumps were running, their deep throb vibrating through the concrete floor. But when he placed his hand on the backup unit's housing, it was cold. The gauge showed pressure, but the housing told a different story. He made another note, another sketch. The backup pumps were either undersized or disconnected, existing only on paper. "You're not supposed to be down here." Venus Hale stood in the doorway, her building manager's badge catching the industrial lighting. At 32, she managed the tower with a mixture of efficiency and genuine care for residents. Unlike many in her position, she actually listened to the maintenance staff, actually walked the building instead of managing from spreadsheets. "Running my usual checks," Finn replied, not looking up from his notebook. "Venus, when was the last time anyone actually tested the backup pumps under load?" "The contractor handles that. Damian Cross's team. They file reports. Monthly. Reports can say anything." Finn showed her his sketch of the sensor patterns. "The cadence is off. Either the sensors are failing, or they're reading water where there shouldn't be any yet." Venus moved closer, studying his drawings. She'd learned to trust Finn's observations over the past 2 years, had seen him predict problems before they manifested. The storm surge isn't supposed to hit for another 6 hours. Surge comes from the ocean. But high tide plus storm drains plus 40 stories of gravity? Finn traced a line on his sketch. Water finds its own schedule. A new presence filled the doorway. Damien Cross himself, tall and gaunt, his silver-gray suit immaculate despite the humidity. His blonde hair was slicked back, revealing sharp features and gray eyes that never seemed to blink enough. He moved through the mechanical room like he owned it, which in a way, he did. His company held the maintenance contracts for half the waterfront properties. Venus, I thought we discussed limiting access during storm prep, Damien said, his voice smooth as oil on water. Insurance liability issues. Finn's on shift, Venus replied. He's supposed to be here, checking systems that are already monitored remotely. Damien's smile never reached his eyes. We have sensors for this. Digital logs. Real-time monitoring from our command center. Sensors can be wrong, Finn said quietly. Excuse me? I said sensors can be wrong, especially if they're not calibrated properly, or if someone swapped the check valves to save money. The mechanical room fell silent except for the pump vibration. Damien's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a tightening around the eyes that Finn recognized. It was the look of someone calculating whether a problem could be contained or needed to be eliminated. That's a serious accusation, Damien said finally. It's an observation. The pump casings are cold, the sensor cadence is off, and the maintenance logs are too clean. In my experience, perfect paperwork usually means imperfect systems. Before Damien could respond, the building's emergency alert system activated. Chief George Wilkins' voice echoed through the speakers, calm, professional, designed not to cause panic while conveying urgency. Attention all residents and staff. The National Weather Service has upgraded the approaching hurricane to Category 4. Mandatory evacuation procedures are now in effect for all waterfront zones. Please proceed to your designated assembly points. Venus's radio crackled. We've got water in the lower parking garage, 2 feet and rising. Finn looked at his watch. The storm surge wasn't supposed to hit for hours, which meant the water was coming from somewhere else, somewhere inside the building's own systems. The next hour passed in controlled chaos. Residents streamed through the lobby, some heading for the evacuation buses, others choosing to shelter in place on higher floors. The emergency lighting cast everything in harsh relief, making faces look drawn, worried, older. Through it all, Finn worked the building's arteries, checking pumps, monitoring drains, sketching water paths in his notebook. The lower pump gallery was restricted a narrow space, accessed through a heavy door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Finn tried his access card, expecting it to fail. But the light blinked green. His old vendor code from a previous contractor still ghosted in the system, a digital fossil that nobody had bothered to delete. Inside, the gallery stretched into darkness, pipes running along walls and ceiling like exposed veins. The smell hit him first, diesel and something else, something organic and wrong. Brackish water, the scent of the bay where it shouldn't be. His flashlight beam caught the shimmer of water on concrete, not flooding yet, but seeping, finding its way through seals that should have held. The check valve on the main drainage line was reversed. Finn stared at it for a long moment, his mind racing through implications. A reversed check valve meant water could flow backward into the building instead of out to the municipal system. It was the kind of mistake that no qualified plumber would make, unless it wasn't a mistake at all. He photographed everything, the valve orientation, the part numbers, the recent scratches on the bolts that suggested recent work. Then he traced the secondary systems, finding more problems. Undersized backup pumps. Their nameplates, showing ratings half of what the building specs required. Modified drain paths that looked efficient on paper, but would create bottlenecks under real load. It was systematic, calculated, designed to pass routine inspections while failing catastrophically under stress. "What are you doing down here?" Rosalind Archer stood at the gallery entrance, Venus beside her. Even in the industrial lighting, even with the smell of diesel and fear, Rosalind maintained her composure. But Finn could see the calculation in her eyes. She was adding up implications, liabilities, consequences. "Your building's been sabotaged," Finn said simply. "Not sabotaged. That's the wrong word. Compromised. Cost cut. Someone's been saving money on parts and labor, betting that a real storm wouldn't hit. That's a serious look for yourself." Finn showed her the reversed valve. "This is supposed to prevent backflow. Right now, it's doing the opposite. When the storm surge hits, it'll push water directly into your lower floors instead of away from them." Rosalind's phone rang. She answered, listened, then hung up. "Chief Wilkins wants all non-essential personnel evacuated. That includes maintenance staff." "Then, who fixes this?" "It's not your responsibility, ma'am. With respect, I've got 40 stories of families above us and a daughter waiting for me on the second floor. The water doesn't care about responsibility. It just flows." The building shuddered wind load on the upper stories transmitting down through the structure. Somewhere, glass cracked. The storm was arriving ahead of schedule, or perhaps right on nature's schedule, which never quite matched the forecasts. "What would you need?" Rosalind asked quietly. "Authority to act. Someone to document everything I do. And about 30 minutes with these valves. The liability of doing nothing is 40 stories of flooding. Your call." Rosalind studied him for a long moment. In the harsh emergency lighting, Finn could see her making the kind of decision that defined careers, companies, lives. She pulled out her phone, hit record. "This is Rosalind Archer, CEO of Archer Urban, authorizing emergency repairs to the waterfront tower drainage systems. Time Island." She checked her watch. 9:47 p.m. "Repairs to be conducted by what's your full name?" "Finnegan Walker, former U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, currently employed as night maintenance staff." "Venus, you'll witness and document everything." "Finn, you have 20 minutes." But 20 minutes wasn't enough. The first attempt at cross-tying the drainage systems to relieve pressure on the infant care floor, where the nursery and pediatric clinic were located, only partially succeeded. Finn managed to reroute some flow, but the oscillation in the pipes suggested a deeper problem. Water was finding paths that shouldn't exist, exploiting gaps between what the blueprints claimed and what contractors had actually built. The stairwell doors burst open, and Chief Wilkins entered, his fire department gear dripping. At 55, he'd seen enough disasters to know when situations were deteriorating beyond normal parameters. "We've got water rising in the north stairwell," he announced, 3 feet and climbing. "If it reaches the electrical panels—" "It won't," Finn interrupted, then caught himself. "Sorry, Chief, but if we can isolate the north drainage from the main system, create a temporary check with an inflatable bladder, we can buy time." "You're a janitor," Wilkins said, not unkindly, but with the weight of command responsibility. "I'm a janitor now. I was Army Corps for 6 years. Flood mapping specialist. I've seen water move through structures in ways that would make your hair turn white." Mia appeared in the doorway, her small hand gripping the frame. Finn's heart clenched. He'd told her to stay with Mrs. Chen, to stay safe. But his daughter had her mother's stubborn streak, the same determination that had carried her mother through 3 deployments before the car accident that took her away. "Daddy, the alarm sounds wrong," Mia said. "It's supposed to go beep, beep, beep." but every 10th time it goes beep, beep, beep. Pause. Finn froze. Out of the mouths of babes. The alarm cadence, he'd been tracking the sensors, but the audible alarms were on a different circuit. If they were showing irregularities, Chief, that pause means there's a secondary sensor bank failing upstream. The building thinks there's water where there isn't yet, which means when real water comes, the system won't respond because it thinks it's already flooded. Wilkins finished. Jesus. We need to physically check every drain gate, every pump station, Finn said. The automatic systems can't be trusted. I don't have the manpower. You have me. The next 2 hours blurred into focused action. With Wilkins' authorization and Rosalind's documented approval, Finn became something more than a janitor, less than an engineer, but exactly what the building needed. He moved through mechanical spaces with practiced efficiency, Venus documenting everything on video, Mia carrying his tools like a surgical nurse. The notebook became their map. Every sketch, Finn had made over 2 years of night shifts. Every observation about flow rates and pressure differentials, every notation about suspicious maintenance logs at all, connected into a picture of systematic corner cutting that went far beyond simple negligence. In the main pump room, Finn found the smoking gun. His notebook contained photographs from the previous year showing the correct valve orientation, arrows pointing toward the municipal outfall. But tonight, those same valves were reversed, the arrows pointing inward. The bolt scoring patterns proved they'd been changed recently within weeks. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the building's ability to handle flooding. Why? Rosalind asked, studying the evidence. Why would Damien do this? Insurance. Venus said quietly. She'd pulled up the contracts on her tablet. If the building floods due to an act of God, the insurance payout is 3 times the annual maintenance contract value. But if it's due to mechanical failure, Archer Urban is liable, Rosalind finished. He floods us out, collects the insurance money, then gets the remediation contract to fix it. The building groaned, wind load increasing. Through the mechanical room's ventilation grates, they could hear water moving in spaces where water should never be. The storm surge was beginning to arrive, pushing through storm drains, finding every weakness that Damien's modifications had created. We need to reroute the essential drains to the South Branch system, Finn said, sketching rapidly. It's older, lower capacity, but it hasn't been tampered with. Combined with inflatable bladders at key junctions, we might be able to keep the water below critical floor levels. Might? Rosalind asked. Engineering is certainty. This is triage. Working by emergency lighting, with the building swaying in the wind. Finn and a team of volunteers began the systematic process of rerouting a 40-story building's drainage system. It was like performing surgery on a giant, whose blood was water and whose organs were pumps. Every connection had to be perfect. Every valve checked and double-checked. The inflatable bladder's emergency equipment from the fire department created temporary check valves where the permanent ones had been compromised. It was ugly, temporary, held together with clamps and hope, but it worked. The water levels in the stairwell stabilized, then began to slowly drop. Daddy, look, Mia said, pointing at the sensor panel. The blinks are matching now. She was right. The sensor cadence had synchronized, the irregular pause gone. The building's nervous system was starting to function again, reading water levels correctly, responding to actual conditions instead of false signals. But the human storm was just beginning. Damien Cross returned at the height of the meteorological storm, arriving with a team of lawyers and public relations specialists. They set up in the building's conference room like it was a war room, which in a way it was. The battle wasn't against water anymore, it was against truth. The narrative is simple, Damien said, his gray eyes scanning the assembled group. Unprecedented storm surge, overwhelmed municipal systems, act of God. No building could have withstood this, except this building is withstanding it. Rosalind pointed out. Thanks to modifications we've had to make tonight. Unauthorized modifications, Damien countered, performed by unqualified personnel. If anything fails now, the liability will be mine, Rosalind said. I've documented everything. Have you? Because I have documentation too. Damien produced a tablet, swiping through official-looking documents, inspection reports, certification stamps, all showing this building's systems were up to code as of last week. Forged, Finn said quietly from the corner where he'd been checking his notebook against the live sensor readings. The inspection stamps are forged. Look at the dates they show inspections during the city's federal holiday. No inspector works federal holidays. And the signature? Finn pulled out his phone, showing a photograph from his notebook. Same signature on reports from 3 different inspectors. Either they all learned penmanship from the same teacher, or someone's been signing for them. The room fell silent except for the wind howling past the windows. 40 stories up, the building was an island in a sea of storm. But inside, in this conference room, another kind of storm was building. You're suggesting criminal fraud, one of the lawyers said carefully. I'm observing patterns, Finn replied. Water flows downhill. Signatures match or they don't. Valves point in or out. Facts don't have opinions. Mia, who had been coloring quietly in the corner, looked up. If we hide it, do the babies get lucky next time? The question hung in the air like a judgment. Rosalind looked at the child, then at Finn, then at the room full of people whose job was to manage perception rather than reality. There won't be a next time if we handle this correctly, Damien said smoothly. A quiet settlement, some personnel changes, upgraded systems installed by qualified contractors. My team can have everything resolved within 6 months. Your team caused this, Venus said, her tablet showing the evidence she'd documented. Every modification, every undersized pump, every reversed valve, it all traces back to your work orders. Prove it in court, Damien smiled. Though I should mention, court proceedings would require evacuating the building for independent inspection. 40 stories of residents displaced for months, property values plummeting, Archer urban stock in freefall. He was good, Finn had to admit. Damien had constructed more than just a physical trap. He'd built a box of legal and financial constraints that made telling the truth almost as damaging as the flood itself. There's another option, Finn said. All eyes turned to him. We tell the truth. Tonight. During the storm. While the evidence is fresh. While the watermarks show the real flood levels. While the emergency modifications are still visible. He pulled out his notebook, pages wrinkled with water and sweat. This documents everything 2 years of observations, patterns, problems. Combined with tonight's evidence, it's enough. Enough for what? Rosalind asked. Enough to show that one man's corner cutting nearly killed 40 stories of families. Enough to prove that a janitor's notebook saved them. Enough to make every building owner on the waterfront check their own systems before the next storm. Damien laughed, the sound sharp in the enclosed space. You're going to trust a janitor's drawings over certified engineering reports? I'm going to trust, Rosalind said slowly, the person who was right about the reversed valves, who was right about the sensor cadence, who was right about everything tonight while your certified reports were wrong. She stood, her decision crystallizing. We're going public. Tonight. Full disclosure. Live press conference. Complete transparency. You'll destroy your company, Damien warned. Or save it, Rosalind countered. Being the developer who caught fraud and protected residents? That's a different narrative than being the one who covered it up. The next hour was orchestrated chaos. While the storm raged outside, inside the building's emergency command center, a different kind of operation took shape. Rosalind's communications team set up for a live broadcast, using the building's backup generators and emergency communication systems. The story would go out, while the storm still howled, while the evidence was undeniable. But Damien had one more card to play. "Before you go on air," he said, producing another tablet, "you might want to see this." The screen showed an email thread, selectively edited but damaging. It appeared to show Finn requesting access to restricted areas, questioning safety protocols, potentially tampering with systems. It was the same playbook that had destroyed Finn's career before. Take a concerned employee's warnings and reframe them as sabotage. That's not. Finn began, then stopped. He'd been through this before. Defending himself just made him look guilty. "Daddy didn't do anything wrong," Mia said firmly. "He fixes things. That's his job." "Your daddy accessed restricted areas," Damien said, his tone patronizing. "Used old codes to enter spaces he wasn't authorized for. To save people," Mia shot back. "You hurt the building to make money. He fixed it to save lives. Which one would Mommy be proud of?" The reference to her deceased mother silenced the room. Finn knelt beside his daughter, his hand on her shoulder, drawing strength from her certainty. "Mr. Cross," Chief Wilkins said, his voice carrying decades of authority, "I've been coordinating with city emergency services all night. Every modification Mr. Walker made was documented, authorized, and necessary. I've seen the real-time flood data from municipal systems. The surge levels were within design parameters. The only reason this building would have flooded is internal failure." Venus stepped forward, her tablet showing security footage. "Here's Mr. Cross's team, 3 weeks ago, working in the restricted pump room during a scheduled maintenance window. Here's the work order signed by Mr. Cross, authorizing valve replacements. And here," she swiped to another screen, "are the purchase orders for the replacement parts. Undersized pumps, reversed check valves, all of it." Archie Bell, Finn's old colleague from the city's hydrology department, entered the command center, his rain gear still dripping. "Got your message, Finn. Checked our sensors at the municipal outfall. Flow rates were normal until an hour ago when your building's pumps started working properly. Before that, you were backflowing into your own systems. The evidence was overwhelming." Damien's expression shifted from confident to calculating to something approaching fear. But he had one last attempt at control. "Fine," he said. "But if this goes public, I'll make sure everyone knows that Archer Urban hired me, approved my proposals, signed off on my work. Rosalind, you'll go down with me." "No," Rosalind said simply. "I'll go down for trusting you. But I'll come back up for stopping you." The press conference happened at 2 a.m., while the hurricane still battered the coast. Rosalind stood in the building's lobby, watermarks visible on the walls behind her, emergency lighting creating dramatic shadows. She didn't hide behind prepared statements or public relations speak. She told the truth. "Tonight, this building faced 2 storms," she began. "One from nature, one from human greed. We survived both, but only because someone was watching. Someone was documenting. Someone cared more about lives than liability." She brought Finn forward, reluctant and uncomfortable in the spotlight. His notebook, water-stained and duct-taped, became Exhibit A. On live television, he explained the valve reversals, the sensor patterns, the systematic corner cutting that had nearly caused catastrophe. He used simple language, clear drawings. The kind of explanation that anyone who'd ever dealt with a clogged drain could understand. "Water doesn't lie," he said. "It just shows you where the lies are." Damien tried to leave during the broadcast, but Chief Wilkins stopped him. "You're going to want to wait for the police," the chief said calmly. "They have questions about forged inspection certificates." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. As the storm began to weaken, moving inland and losing power, the human systems kicked into gear. Building inspectors arrived despite the weather. Insurance investigators began their documentation. Police took statements. Through it all, the waterfront tower stood firm, its modified drainage system handling the load. Finn's emergency repairs holding. Dawn came gray and subdued, the bay littered with debris but calm. From the 40th floor, the city looked washed, renewed, damaged but standing. Finn stood with Mia at the windows, watching the sunrise paint the water silver. "You did it, Daddy," Mia said quietly. "We did it," he corrected. "You heard the alarm pattern." Venus documented everything. Chief Wilkins provided authority. Miss Archer made the hard choice, but you knew what to do. I knew what to look for. There's a difference. He knelt beside her, his notebook in his hands. "Your mom used to say that everyone has a superpower. Some people build things. Some people lead. Some people inspire. Mine is just paying attention to things other people ignore. Like water." Rosalind approached them, looking tired but somehow lighter, as if surviving the night had stripped away something unnecessary. She'd changed from her red dress into emergency services coveralls, but she still carried herself with the same authority. "The board met by emergency session," she said. "Damien's contracts are terminated. All his work will be audited. And we're creating a new position, Head of Resilience and Life Safety, reporting directly to the board, not to management." "That's good," Finn said. "You'll find someone qualified." "I found someone qualified." They spent last night saving this building with a notebook and a pencil. Finn shook his head. "I'm a janitor. You're an Army Corps engineer who became a janitor because someone blamed you for their mistakes. I'm offering you a chance to be what you really are again." "What about Mia?" "I work nights, so I can be there for her during the day, help with school. The position comes with flexible hours and on-site childcare. Plus," Rosalind smiled, "we're establishing a scholarship fund in your wife's name for building trades apprentices. People who fix the flow to save lives." Mia tugged on Finn's sleeve. "Mommy would want you to say yes." "How do you know?" "Because she always said you were meant for bigger things than cleaning up other people's messes." Mia paused. "Now, you can stop the messes before they happen." The cleanup took weeks. The investigations took months. Damien Cross faced criminal charges for fraud and reckless endangerment, his empire of corner-cutting contracts unraveling as other buildings checked their own systems and found similar compromises. Several of his employees came forward with evidence, tired of signing off on work they knew was dangerous. Finn's notebook became something of a legend in engineering circles, the handwritten document that saved a building. Pages were photographed for textbooks, his sketches used to teach the importance of observation over assumption. But Finn himself remained uncomfortable with the attention, preferring to work in the mechanical spaces, training maintenance staff to see what he saw, to understand that buildings were like bodies and water was like blood. It would always find the weakness. Venus became the building's general manager, her combination of decisiveness and compassion earning residents' trust. She implemented weekly system checks, monthly resident safety briefings, and created a culture where any concern, from any source, was taken seriously. Chief Wilkins incorporated the waterfront tower incident into fire department training, emphasizing the importance of listening to unconventional sources during emergencies. "The person who cleans the building knows it better than the person who designed it," became his favorite teaching point. Rosalind transformed Archer Urban's business model, marketing not just resilience but transparency. Every building came with public inspection reports, live sensor feeds, and a commitment to independent audits. It cost more. But after the hurricane, people were willing to pay for honesty. A year later, on the anniversary of the storm, the building held a memorial service for what could have been lost but wasn't. Residents gathered in the lobby, the watermarks still faintly visible on the walls kept as a reminder. Finn stood in the back, uncomfortable with ceremonies, but Mia pulled him forward. "Tell them, Daddy," she said. "Tell them about the water." So he did. He talked about how water was honest, how it followed laws older than any building code. He talked about the responsibility of watching, of documenting, of speaking truth even when it cost you everything. He talked about his wife, who'd believed in fixing things right the first time, and his daughter, who heard patterns that adults missed. "Every building has stories," he concluded. "Most of them are hidden in the walls, in the pipes, in the spaces people don't look. My job is to read those stories and make sure they have happy endings." After the service, Rosalind found him in the mechanical room, checking sensors out of habit more than necessity. The systems were solid now, properly sized, correctly oriented, honest in their function. "You know what the insurance company called you in their report?" she asked. "I can imagine. The most expensive janitor in history. The prevention measures you've implemented across all our properties cost millions. Cheaper than lawsuits. Cheaper than lives." She held out something, a new notebook. "Leather-bound. Professional. For your observations." Finn took it, ran his fingers across the smooth cover. "My old one works fine. Keep the old one. That's history. This is for the future." Mia appeared in the doorway, now 8, taller, still carrying that serious expression that made her seem older. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen's sump pump is making that sound again." "What sound?" "The one that means the float switch is sticking." Finn smiled. His daughter was learning to read the building stories too, to hear what others ignored. "Get the toolkit. Let's go fix the flow." As they walked through the building, 3 generations of knowledge: Finn's experience, Mia's intuition, Rosalind's leadership had created something more than just a safe building. They'd created a community that understood its own vulnerability and strength. The bay stretched out beyond the windows, calm today but always capable of fury. The city's waterfront had rebuilt better after the hurricane. Every building now required to meet standards that Finn had helped write. The waterfront tower stood as testament to what happened when people chose truth over convenience, competence over credentials, and observation over assumption. That night, as Finn made his rounds through the mechanical spaces, he found a new signature in the maintenance log. Mia had written, in careful 8-year-old script, "Checked by M. Walker. Everything flows where it should." He added his own signature below hers, then wrote the words that had become more than just a motto. "Fix the flow. Save a life." The building hummed around them, its systems honest, its water flowing true, its stories being written by people who cared enough to look where others didn't, to speak when others wouldn't, to stand between disaster and the people who just wanted to be safe in their homes. In the end, that's what heroism looked like, not a cape or a badge, but a notebook and a pencil. The courage to document truth, and the wisdom to know that water, like justice, always finds its level. The sun rose over the bay, painting the water gold, and somewhere in the waterfront tower, a pump clicked on exactly when it should, pushing water away from the building and out to sea, following the flow that Finn Walker had fixed to save 40 stories of lives. If you've ever been that person who noticed something wrong when everyone else said it was fine, who spoke up even when it cost you, who fixed problems that weren't officially your responsibility, share this story. Because every building, every company, every community needs someone watching the patterns, reading the signs, keeping the notebook that might one day save everyone. The real infrastructure of safety isn't just pipes and pumps, it's people who care enough to pay attention, brave enough to speak truth, and skilled enough to fix the flow before it becomes a flood. Tell us in the comments about a time when unseen expertise or an unexpected voice made the difference between disaster and deliverance. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one who's been there all along, quietly keeping watch, notebook in hand, ready to save lives with knowledge that others overlooked.